This episode of the Pop Culture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch or get 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Pop Culture podcast. My name's AJ.
And my name is Richard.
Richard's over here. And today we just want to let you know that before the episode starts, that next week we are planning on doing a Q&A episode where we answer all the questions that you guys might have for us. We'd love to hear from some people that don't usually chime in, but also the people that do usually chime in. Just to see if there's things people want to know about us. We'll also be doing like the fan mail that's accumulated over the past few weeks. But yeah, what kind of questions do you think people should ask us, Richard?
Oh, you could ask us about what the best franchise we've ever done is, what the worst is, what's the best and worst films we've ever covered, and also, I'd love to know what the image people get of us from this podcast.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite? Comment who's your favorite. What the characters? How would you describe the characters of Alexander Jones and Richard Martin on the Pop Culture podcast?
Yeah, and you can ask us things that have nothing to do with the podcast as well. I mean, if you want.
If we've ever started to tell a personal story and then forgotten to continue it, and it's burning you inside, ask us. Or even if there's just one of the old favorites you want us to retell, that's fine too.
We've been working quite hard recently, so we wanted to do a more chilled out one for our current listeners to get to know us better if they so choose. So leave a comment on whatever you're listening to on this. There'll be a post on all our channels. We don't have the luxury of telling you to post to one specific place. So
we'll take what we can get.
Yeah, any place that you comment, I'll accumulate it and we'll go through it on next week's episode. So without further ado, here is the newest episode of film franchise Fortnights.
With a very special guest star.
Here we go.
Let's go. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Pop Culture podcast. You're here on Film Franchise Fortnights. I'm Richard Martin. As always, I'm joined by Alexander Jones.
Hello.
And today, by popular request, we've brought back everybody's favourite 28-year-old woman who works in finance.
Not anymore.
Nadezhda Sim.
Hey.
Oh.
Yeah.
Are you not 28 or do you not work in finance?
I don't work in finance. Officially finance free.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're not like gone broke or anything though.
No. Just
She's free of any finances.
Yeah. You still got a little bit of finance in there.
officially fun employed.
Nadezhda, for those who don't know or don't remember, is of course the host of Pop Culture Vulture.
Caw.
Nailed it.
It calls up. And so, you review movies and things on YouTube.
Yes.
Nadezhda.
I sure do.
Yeah, so we'll give you a big old fat pitch at the end, but there's one right up top.
And also, you may remember her from the Cats and Dogs episode we did. And if you don't remember it because you haven't listened to it, go and listen to it, and then you'll get all the sick callbacks that I'm sure we'll make throughout the next hour or so. Now, when you say you're not working in finance anymore, I hear that you're moving country. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah, so Wednesday off to Argentina, 6 months in South America, and then moving to London.
Wow.
We don't do anything like that here.
Nah. Yeah,
I moved back to my hometown. That's about as wild as my travel.
As wild as it gets.
Yeah.
Moved back in with his parents.
Yeah, exactly. But that's okay.
Oh, that's very exciting. Starting the next chapter in your life. So are you? Why Argentina?
I'm actually going all over South America and Central America. So just starting in Argentina. Right. So the Pop Culture Vulture channel might be on a small hiatus, unfortunately, after today.
No, keep it going. Keep it going in Argentina and all over the place. Yeah, that's awesome. That'd be
reviews from
the
hostels.
Like Pop Culture Pigeon or something like that, and you're like a messenger pigeon flying all over the world. You're migrating. You're flying south for the winter.
Love it. Perfect. I have to change my caw. What sound does a pigeon make? something like that.
Coo, they coo, they coo, coo coo. Coo coo.
Yeah, well, today let's get down to brass tacks. Bit of a finance term there for you, I think. Is that a finance term?
Not one that I've heard of.
Sure, it's tax related.
Well, it's tax related. Yeah,
tax deductible. That reference was tax deductible
because you were able to deduce that it was to do with tax. Today we're discussing the two 300 films. So obviously you've got 300, which came out, and it's interesting. So I always thought this was a 2006 film, but it's also a 2007 film, and so it premiered in 2006 at the Button-Umathon, which is like Alamo Drafthouse used to do this 24-hour or 48-hour movie marathon. They'd premiere like big films in it sometimes, and they did that up until last year. And then the head of it, the organizer, was one of the victims of the Weinstein effect, and so they don't do that anymore. Ooh. But its official wide release was in 2007. But like depending on where you look, it refers to as a 2006 or 2007 film.
I did notice that because I thought it was a 2007 film, and then obviously watching this said 2006, and I was like, "Excuse me."
Yeah. But if you look at like the 300 graphic novel Wikipedia page, it says it was adapted into a 2006-2007 film.
Two different films. I mean, one different film, but two different release dates. How quaint.
Yeah, and that was directed by Zack Snyder.
Yay.
And does one of you guys want to tell us what that's about?
Nadezhda, what's 300 about? What can you explain? Oh, why don't I give myself the second film? All right, you go the first one. I'll do the second one, which is a lot harder to explain.
So, full warning, I killed quite a lot of brain cells last night. I did watch this on Friday, so.
Did you kill 300 of them?
Well, I watched them back to back, so 600 of them.
That's awesome. Because we forgot to mention, you of course had your goodbye party last night. So you graciously accepted to come on the show despite being horribly hungover.
I've got a Powerade next to me right now to get through.
That's amazing. That's cool because despite the fact that we have done the Hangover trilogy, this might be the first time we've had a genuinely hungover person on the show.
Love it. So the first 300 movie is about. I'm not gonna be able to get the names. Don't give me a hint.
Who cares?
I feel like
the names
the first
are dumb
one's
anyway.
like
Leonidas
and his queen Gorgamesh. Nope. Go dancer.
Gargamel.
Something starting with a G. They go up against the. So he's part of an army. He has an army? No, something. He has an army.
Sparta. He's part of Sparta. He represents Sparta.
He represents Sparta, and he goes up against the Persians, who are depicted quite interestingly in this movie. One of which is what do they call him? A god man. No.
God king.
God king. Oh, I'm so bad at this. A god king.
It's okay.
Well, like about halfway there. And against the wishes of his people, he goes up against the Persians. That's basically kind of the storyline, isn't it? It feels like the plot's kind of lacking in these movies.
I'll fill in a couple blanks. So the God King's name is Xerxes, and he basically fancies himself like entitled to rule over the Mediterranean, I guess. And the conceit of the story is that they have an army of only 300 Spartans that go and defy an army of 10,000 or whatever. So that's kind of why it's called 300, and the hook of the story is that it's a classic David and Goliath tale.
Yeah, a true underdog story.
Yeah.
You did that a lot better than I did.
That's okay. I've been doing this for 3 years now. Nearly.
So this was followed 7 or 8 years later by 300 Rise of an Empire in 2014. This time directed by Noel Morrow. And what?
Good on him.
What's this one about, AJ?
All right, so essentially this is 300 but on the water. I think that was the pitch. It's basically like, hey, what if we do 300 again, but this time instead of setting it in like, I don't know, a mountainside as the first one is. I'm very are you guys real unclear about like the spatial awareness of these movies?
Yeah.
Like, where are they, and how far away is everyone from each other? That's my number one question in this movie. But yeah. So instead of setting it in like the mountainside of the wilderness, this one is mostly set on the ocean, and it's kind of about like battles between ships as opposed to swords and stuff. There's still swords and stuff in it, but the other one didn't have any ocean battles in it, so that's the main thing. It takes place at first a prequel and then alongside the first film.
A midquel or interquel, if you will.
Yeah. And it's basically about so Xerxes' dad had like this hand of the king, who's this woman played by Eva Green. And so she is represented in this movie as kind of being the one who pulls the strings that is Xerxes. And so if the first one was about the Spartans, this one's about the Athenians. And the Athenians go to battle Eva Green, basically, on the ocean, as opposed to... And letting the Spartans go after Xerxes himself. And yeah, I feel like that's a good summation.
No, that's good. Very, very nice.
Yeah? Thank you.
So did either of you guys do classics in high school?
No.
I did it in year 12, I think. So second to last year of high school. But then halfway through the year, my teacher got hit by a car and died. And so after that, it was like, this is kind of a bummer class now. So
I can imagine.
Yeah, I kind of dropped. And at the same time, my parents were going to move to Australia and I was going to drop out of school. And that didn't end up happening. But when I think of classics, I think of the class that I stopped giving a shit about like a quarter or maybe halfway into the year, and wasn't really that interested. I remember The Odyssey, and that's about it.
Because this is like classics kind of stuff, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Loosely.
for sure. Yeah, I could not care less about this, eh? Like,
fair enough.
300 was one of those movies that never really interested me growing up, and also doing the research for it now, like looking into all the like, it's kind of based on a true story, but it's historical fiction, I believe is the correct genre. It just does not interest me in the slightest. And I'm sorry if you were coming to this podcast for like, wanting to learn about, Leonidas and who he really was and all this shit.
Yeah. I think what's interesting, Richard, is that when this movie came out, I remember my brother saw it like 3 times at the cinema, and a bunch of my friends saw it, and I was the same as you. I was like, I don't really give a crap about this kind of stuff, like classical, like Greek legends and stuff. And then I think in 2008 was when I first saw it. I think I first saw it on DVD, and I was 15, and I was like, this is awesome. I love this movie. This is badass. It's so awesome. It's so cool. And I held that opinion for a wee while. I didn't watch it all the time or anything, but I watched it a few times. And then I remember maybe my last year of high school, one of my friends was like, "Oh, I watched that movie 300 the other day." I was like, "Oh yeah," and he was like, "Man, that was bad." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "It's like the worst movie ever." And I was like, "No, it isn't. It's a great movie." But that kind of stuck with me, and I think maybe I saw it again, or maybe because Zack Snyder kind of like took a nosedive not too long after this one in terms of the quality of his films. But like I've come to realize that I hadn't seen the second 300 until we did this, but the first 300 for me is kind of a very good it's a very good example of what you mean when you say this is a movie that's real cool when you're 15.
Yeah, hard out.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
At least for dudes. I don't know about you, Nadezhda.
Yeah, I'd never seen either of them 15. Before, but Nadezhda, what was your experience with these films? Did you come across them at all before?
So I remember them coming out originally, and yeah, same sort of thing, 15 or maybe a little bit older, and everyone thought it was super cool, like something new, original. I think it was just the "this is Sparta" moment, to be honest. I think like you just have to watch that one moment, and that's enough to think the whole movie's cool. But it's actually going back and watching it now. It's painful. It's a painfully bad movie. Like, and I watched 300.
I'm going to agree with you there.
I watched the sequel directly after, and it was about 1 a.m. on Friday, and yeah, it was not a good evening for me.
Yeah, I don't know if I would jump right into the painfully bad bandwagon. The first one's definitely the superior film, but at the same time, I wasn't like, watching any of them. They're both longer than they need to be, and I think that was mainly where my like impatience came in. But like I was sort of just, I don't know, watching it again this time, there were parts that I liked. Let's just say the "this is Sparta" moment, which is kind of the
highlight.
Luke, I am your father of the movie. You know, the part everyone remembers is when the Persian messenger first comes to Sparta to try and convince them to surrender to Xerxes, and they refuse, and the Persian messenger says, "This is blasphemy, this is madness," and Leonidas goes, "Madness, this is Sparta," and like kicks him into a pit. And it is pretty cool. Like, I think if you just saw that scene, you'd be like, oh cool, that's like, you know, designed to make your endorphins go up. Do endorphins go up, or do they come into existence? What do endorphins do?
They get depleted, right? They drain. Like, they go into your system.
Well, what's the opposite of draining?
Well, when that scene happens, you just don't have them depleted.
Yeah.
Like, your life is just a constant depletion of endorphins, and then there's every so often you get a plateau, and that's when you feel good.
Interesting.
That's why babies are always so happy.
Oh, okay.
And old people are so miserable.
So yeah, I don't know. I feel distinctly neutral about the 300 films, which it makes them kind of hard to talk about for this podcast.
Yeah.
Because what we've learned is you either got to go hot or cold with these movies. You know, you either got to really love them or really hate them, and that's where the best content comes from. So welcome to another 45 minutes of us trying to talk about movies we don't really care about.
Yeah.
It's going to be good.
I mean, I do. I would say I somewhat hate the first one. If you need some balance.
Okay.
But then, to be fair, I have a vendetta against Zack Snyder.
Tell us about that.
So it's personal. So does this go both ways?
No, it's a one-way vendetta. So he's just one of my least favorite directors of all time. He's like a constant disappointment, and every time he brings out a new film, I want to like it because it looks like comic book-esque, you know, gaming nerd kind of like my kind of film, and every time it's garbage. And I'm sorry to say this because I know this is one of your films, but I hate Watchmen. I really hate that movie.
Watchmen, I would say, is my favorite Zack Snyder film. I would go as far to say it's his only good film. But he also directed the Dawn of the Dead remake, which is actually a real cool movie. So I would say either Dawn of the Dead or Watchmen. I haven't seen Watchmen. It's probably since like I was like 20, and I'm 25 now. And I was talking to a friend about how I considered 300 to be like the ultimate "this is cool when I'm 15" movie, and he was like, well, maybe Watchmen's that as well. And I think Watchmen gets a bit of a pass or a bit of an upgrade because the story of Watchmen, because of the graphic novel it's based on, is inherently more mature and important and about bigger things than 300, which is unashamedly just a blood and guts like fight action movie. Like, Watchmen's got the source material of Watchmen's got nuance to it, I guess.
Yeah.
So I really like Watchmen, but again, I haven't seen it in a few years. I remember I'm one of those people who, whenever it gets brought up on Reddit, I don't necessarily comment, but I agree with the comments that talk about how the ending of Watchmen in the movie is better than it is in the graphic novel, which it annoys me because the ending of the graphic novel should just be what it is in the movie as well. I won't spoil it, I guess, if you haven't seen it. But
please don't.
Yeah. Please stop talking about it.
So yeah, Nadezhda, do you like any of his films that that you're still hoping to achieve, or is it just the fact that he always has amazing trailers that you always get your hopes up?
Yeah, I think he's such a style over substance director. Like everything he makes looks
sure,
phenomenal. Sucker Punch is probably the biggest example. Like that movie, if you had it on mute, looks incredible, but the actual content is unbearably bad. Like,
it's so bad.
So bad. And even the so I actually really loved the opening of that movie where they had the Sweet Dreams Are Made of These cover, and that eerie kind of female's voice, and she's running away from her dad. And so that gave me hope that maybe he was going to turn it around and bring a good film, and that was just like appalling. And
Sucker Punch was so promising. It
had
such
so
a
much
promising
potential.
movie.
I think that's why.
Totally.
I think that's why it's always such a big disappointment, because they always look like they could be great, and then they're just not.
Well, I think because of the style over substance thing, like he always has amazing. Like I remember the Man of Steel trailer being like beautiful, and then I think because when trailers are just showing off the style, and then that's why they always work so well. But in fact, 300 is one of 3 fresh rated films on Rotten Tomatoes directed by Zack Snyder. The other 2 are Dawn of the Dead and Watchmen. And so what do you guys reckon 300 has on Rotten Tomatoes?
300.
So we know it's at least above 60.
Oh, okay. You go, Nadezhda. I've guessed this too many times.
No.
Like, again, being critical, I would say it's like 63. It couldn't be much above 60,
AJ?
surely.
I'm going to just guess straight up 60.
Yeah, it's 60.
Yeah, no, that's accurate for me. Like, it's good enough. But
Yeah. I think it's kind of a perfect 60% film. It's like, I didn't really like it, but it's like it's the bare minimum you need to classify as like a alright film.
Yeah, yeah. I remember when it came out, critics were referring to it as the Xbox movie because it looked like an Xbox game, and how at the time that was like, oh, cool. What a cool style. And now if I see a film that you would describe as an Xbox movie, I'd be like, boy, someone's been studying too much 300. someone's been watching Sin City a few too many times, Like, this was I want to say, well, when Sin City came out before 300, didn't it?
Yes. Sin City was like 2004?
Yeah. Right, because this feels like people get surprised, like non-filmy people get surprised when you tell them that Sin City and 300 weren't the same creative team.
Yeah,
like that.
Sin City was 2005, sorry.
Yeah. So to me, it was something that was very cool in 2007. you know what I mean?
But then you like the spirit.
Yeah, I like the spirit. Have you seen the Spirit, Nadezhda?
You liked the Spirit? No, I didn't.
It's so bad.
I
don't see what's wrong with that movie. I've got it on DVD, I think. Let me check.
Yeah, you do, because it used to be on the wall of our house when AJ had this amazing idea to like put pins up in the wall and then hang the like actual DVD disc on those. But he didn't rule lines or anything like that. So they were just kind of like slanted and yeah.
I don't have the DVD of The Spirit, but I do have the DVD of Watchmen, and it's the collector's 2-disc edition with like special features, and I also have the Tales of the Black Freighter anime that came along with it. So.
Wow, what a true fan!
Hey, I was when I first I would have bought that when I was 15 or 16, I think.
Yeah. So, did you guys both prefer the first one, or how's your allegiances lie?
Well, there were parts of the second one I actually preferred. See, I don't like the style of the first one. It looks like he's, on Instagram you've got all those like filters. It looks like he's turned on the sepia and then just like scrolled up on the like shadows down, contrast
saturation.
up. It's a really saturated brown. So I actually preferred the look of the second one.
I love the idea that someone would watch the 300 and assume it's a botched job color grade, like it's not intentional. They just don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, so I don't know. They're pretty on par for me. Like, it didn't feel like one was significantly worse than the other, but it is funny how. So there's not really any nudity in the first one. There's maybe a little bit, but then like within the first,
it's like in the background.
Yeah, or it's very stylized. And within the first few seconds of the second one, they like just take there's some naked woman with her breasts out. And then they just like pick her up and like jiggle her around and take her away. And it's like,
so
this is a different 300 movie.
Yeah.
How can we fit nudity into the first 30 seconds of this movie? And even like,
but okay.
Why is her top down? Did it just like slip
Yeah, she's
when
just
they
a
grabbed
peasant.
her?
But I'm not going to say the first one is completely free of like male gaze sexuality though, because I think Zack Snyder was kind of like captaining that ship.
Yeah, but there's plenty of eye candy for the ladies in the first one.
That's true.
Am I right,
What do you think of
Nadezhda?
all the rippling abs?
There's even the scene in when him and his Queen Gilgamesh have sex, and just before he's standing in front of a moon and the moonlight's like bouncing off his butt, and I was like, oh yeah, that's the one for the ladies. That's the scene for like the background, background on your phone.
Yeah. What, really? Imagine having the gall to have a naked person as the background of your phone. That'd be amazing. We didn't say before as well, but one interesting thing related to the nudity, I guess, is that so Gerard Butler plays Leonidas in the first one, and his queen is played by Lena Headey from Game of Thrones, who has in Game of Thrones gone so far to avoid doing a nude scene that they actually had to superimpose her head onto a naked body for one episode because she didn't want to appear nude in it. So they got someone's nude body and put it like digitally put her head on that body. And in this, she just, I mean, it could be the same thing, but they look pretty connected this time.
What's because of how stylized this film is, especially the way it was shot, it was pretty famously shot like 99% in front of a green screen. So they're not above body doubles and shit like that, I think.
That's true. Yeah,
but yeah, talking about like sexuality in this film as well. I was reading about so you've got the god king Xerxes, who in the second film, because he's like bald and has all these nipple piercings and shit. But in the second film, you see him before all that, and I was like, "Oh shit, it's Paolo from Lost." And then I looked it up, and I was like, "Oh no, wait, it's the hot guy from Love Actually." And then I realized for the first time ever that the hot guy from Love Actually is Paolo from Lost, and they're both Xerxes from 300.
Yeah. So the thing is, right, as a 15-year-old who really liked 300 and a 15-year-old who really liked Lost, I found that out relatively early, and I was just like, how are they the same guy? Like, I thought Xerxes was like African American, he's very dark in the film, and I guess it's bronzer. And just learning that he's played by one of the worst characters in Lost, I was like, what is going on here? And for years, I was convinced it must have been like an editing foible on IMDb or something. Like, I was like, it can't be him. They look nothing alike. And then in this one, when you see Xerxes before the rise, and he like runs towards his father who's about to get killed, I was like, that looks like Paulo from Lost. And then I was like, oh wait, and then it turned out to be him. So it's interesting that they shatter the illusion set up in the first one by him looking like, because obviously The Dark Knight's a better movie, but they did a similar thing with Heath Ledger and the Joker, right? That the Joker in The Dark Knight doesn't look like Heath Ledger, so you have this, it's almost like the character was invented like out of thin air for that movie. And it kind of feels like that with Xerxes in the first one, that like the actor who's playing him doesn't look like him. So it's kind of imposing in a way, I guess.
Right, yeah.
But do you think they did that intentionally? Because he's so effeminate in the first one, and I wonder if people like Persian or Iranian. It's the old Iran, isn't it? Persia. Is it Iran or Iraq?
There is actually a
It's
section
Iran.
on the Wikipedia page that I didn't note anything down about how the Persians were offended about how effeminate they were portrayed.
Yeah, but that's maybe why they showed that scene in the second one to kind of, I don't know, justify his appearance in the first one.
Yeah. But apparently a lot of people interpreted Xerxes as being homosexual. And to that, Zack Snyder said, "What's more scary to a 20-year-old boy than a giant god king who wants to have his way with you?"
Oh, God.
I kind of get it. Like, whatever.
yeah.
But
It
it's
exemplifies the demographic for this film, though.
yeah, absolutely.
Like, it's for people who are scared of the gays.
Which is funny because in 300, which is a distinctly 2006/7 movie, there's a very venomous throwaway line that Leonidas, the hero of the story, says, where he refers to the Persians as boy lovers, because you could still be acceptably homophobic in 2006.
Which is echoed in the second one as well.
And anyone who did classics in year 12 will know why that's funny, because the Spartans were very gay in real life. Basically, all Mediterranean factions were. I learned that AJ bringing out his year 12 classics qualifications on the podcast. Basically, what I learned was that they were trained to love men and their brothers from a early age, so that in battle they would feel more compelled to protect each other.
Yeah. And
That's
I
quite
remember
sweet.
reading that, in a lot of those ancient cultures and stuff like that, they would sleep with little boys and stuff like that. But then there was there's ancient graffiti that translates to AJ eats pussy, because that was such an insult at the time that it's like
AJ eats pussy.
yeah, that it's like, oh, AJ was such a woman, he cares about a girl's pleasure.
Well, yeah, truth is truth, though, right? Look, I ain't gonna deny it. You hear me? You feel me?
And yeah, ladies, he is single. Anyway, so this
you can't be held down, dude. Got too much pussy to eat.
Do you guys remember Mayor Rob Ford of I think it was Toronto?
Yeah.
No.
But basically he was like this giant, fat, disgusting
Yeah.
mayor who did crack cocaine and stuff like that. He died a couple of years ago. But it's like he basically looked like Chris Farley. Chris Farley would have done amazing impressions of him if he was still alive. But
Right.
so this guy, he was married and he got accused of having these extramarital affairs. And when asked about it, in a press conference or whatever, they were like, he said, the allegations said that I wanted to eat her pussy, and why would I say that when I've got more than enough to eat at home? But it's like, this is the most fat, disgusting, sweaty man you've ever seen.
And also a politician, and probably shouldn't
Yeah.
be talking like that.
Yeah, but hey, that's politics, baby.
And if there's one thing the 300 movies nail, it's politics. Yeah. That wasn't leading anywhere. Just felt like a good segue back in.
Well, one thing that they do nail is being an adaptation of a graphic novel. So,
Do they nail that?
well,
I
don't
wonder
know.
if Frank Miller would agree with that.
So the first 300 is based on a graphic novel of the same name from 1998 by Frank Miller, whereas 300 Rise of an Empire is based on the series Xerxes by Frank Miller, which came out in April 2018.
Yeah, so yeah, that's right. So it was unpublished. I remember reading that, or at least when I was into 300, I remember looking into sequels and stuff that were coming out, and Xerxes was one of them. And the movie obviously came out before the series, the series it's based on.
But because the credits say based on Xerxes by Frank Miller, but then it didn't come out for another 4 years.
Yeah,
But apparently Miller there was a 1962 movie called The 300 Spartans.
yeah. Because it's a real
which
thing, or allegedly real,
Yeah.
I guess, that happened, that 300 Spartans, like, that 300 they'll be talking, when in 300, when that guy is like, because the whole goal of the Spartans in 300 is that they'll be remembered. Like, that's very classic-y, I remember as well, is that was the goal, was to be remembered even if you die. They wanted a beautiful death so that they'll be remembered. And yeah, they talk about in the first one, the guy who loses an eye, I think, talks about how they'll remember the 300 Spartans who stood up against an army. And it's like, do you think when they said that people would remember them, do you think they were hoping that people would one day be doing a podcast about two shitty movies based off their like sacrifice?
I mean, maybe.
We may never know.
Yeah. So I don't know about you, but I think it's time for a bit of just randomly placed random trivia.
Oh, yes.
So got a couple for you this week. So one is that this is our second film franchise with a bald villain who has metal in his head and talks like this. After Hellraiser, of course.
Yep, Hellraiser, yep.
And this is possibly one of my favourite pieces of up top random trivia I've ever done. So AJ, I want you to explain, how did we choose to do 300 as a franchise?
What, like through the roulette?
Yeah, so it was completely random, right? I chose a random number, and then you were the one looking at the list and chose 300. But do you know what? I found out this week, I made a list of every single film we've ever covered on this podcast. And did you know that 300 Rise of an Empire is the 300th movie we've watched for this podcast?
Wow. That's
Isn't
really
that insane?
That's really cool. That's
Yeah.
the best thing that's happened on this podcast about 300 so far.
So yeah, that's a huge milestone for us, and also incredibly fitting.
And completely unintentional.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And it's crazy as well, because this is one of those two film franchises where a lot of people don't even know the second one exists because it came out so detached from the first one. And so, you know, there's a universe where we didn't know it existed and didn't add it to the list, you know? So the stars really aligned here. You know what I mean?
I only really knew about it because the nude scene from the second one was posted to Reddit so many times in 2014.
Should we talk about that?
Yeah, let's talk about that. All right, Nadezhda, so do you want to set the scene up for us?
What news? Are you talking about the first one?
No, the second scene, the
sex
big
scene.
the climax of the film, if you will.
Oh, so what's her character's name? What's that bird's name? Something.
Let's look it up. You go and I'll find it, and I'll chime in when I find it.
It's Artismia.
Artismia, and he's the Theonidas. Is that right?
He's not
Themistocles.
Themistocles. I remembered that because I'll remember it as the Mist and then Hercules. Yeah, Themistocles and Artemisia.
Artemisia. So the Themistocles. So Artemisia, who is the corporal, I don't know what you'd call the navy officer, the head of the Persian army on water. I think they just call that the navy. The head of the Persian navy is impressed by the Hercules. Themistocles, like his plight, like his fighting style, and so she invites him onto one of her ships and seduces him, and it's intense. And then mid coitus, she asks him to join her, and he says no. So she gets off him, and she pushes him to the ground. Yeah.
Look, we've all been there, you know. We've all been in the throes of passion, and then asked your partner to join you in your conquest to take over the world, and they say no, and you're like, well, that's what this whole thing was about.
Yeah, if I had a nickel.
Is that the ancient Greek version of like feeling like you're entitled to girls if you're nice to them? It's like feeling like you're entitled to their allegiance to conquering Greece.
Yeah. So what did you guys think of the scene? Because AJ, what about for you, for someone who's in the midst of No Nut November?
Yeah.
How did you find that?
That's not been established in canon yet, but sure. I don't care. I'm confident in my
Ability to not nut.
Yeah. Sorry, Nadezhda. I didn't know how personal this was going to get when I invited you on. No, I don't know. It didn't really affect me, to be honest. I can see that it's a very, it's as I said, this was like it's as if like the male gaze in film knew that like the Me Too movement was coming in a couple of years, so that it just ramped up and tried to get as much in there across the line. So in 2014, I think we were at somewhat of a peak of that, and so it's filmed. Yeah, it's. I guess I just don't. I was struck with like, I don't think this would happen in real life. This is very flimsy cardboard characterization that like this, of course the powerful woman character would be tempted by the. Was she even tempted by him, or is she doing it on her own?
No, it's a power move.
Yeah, I don't know. It's very intense, and you posted it on Instagram this morning as the picture that we post for each movie we watch, and I told you to delete it because it was getting flooded with comments about how it was too far, and I was like, why did you do that?
Because it was funny. And so I replaced it with
Okay.
something else, which you can check out, and if you can't be bothered, I blurred the image and put a big red letter saying censored by AJ over top of it.
Yeah. I got to look out for my other brothers in No Nut November, They'll just be scrolling through Instagram and come across that, and they'll be like, ah. So.
That's it. There's
Yeah.
Nadezhda, any other comments you want to add on the scene?
Well, I mean, it was a choice though. Like, what a choice to make, that they could have just had that scene happen and then
Be the entire film.
and then like post sex, her say, "Join me," but like to choose to have it literally as she's like mounted him is such a choice.
Yeah.
I mean,
I kind of get it though. Like,
Yeah, I think they made the right choice.
it does, I guess, add an extra layer of like action to the scene.
Yeah.
These are action movies, and it's a very action-packed sex
Oh, it's the best fight scene in the film.
in the whole series. Imagine if it was filmed and like edited like the slow motion ramped up
oh
speed
my god.
from the fight scenes.
Yeah, I'd
had
love to see a
that.
cut of 300 Rise of an Empire with like just at full speed the entire time, because it'd be like 10 minutes long.
I think they actually use that speed ramping in the beginning. Like she kisses him, and they do like a slow into quick thing right at the beginning of that scene.
Yeah, when he like slams her over the table and you guys know what I'm talking about.
Look, we all know.
Yeah, what do you guys think of the speed ramping?
I mean, maybe it's a little bit overused in these films.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that it's like, as much shit as Zack Snyder gets, I think he used it pretty well in the first film, and then seeing someone 7 or 8 years later, try to imitate that style, it is interesting how like misunderstanding how to use it.
Yeah.
That it doesn't need to be every shot. You've got to have like the glory shots, and also like how in 300 Rise of an Empire it takes place in a time period where everyone is just arteries inside.
Yeah. People explode with blood. Because initially, one of the things that I think we'll talk about later is that, Nadezhda, you have the distinction of joining us on 2 separate podcasts, which are both 2 film franchises, where the second one came out way too long after the first and was kind of uninvited, and so watching the second 300 movie, the whole time I was just struck with like, why did they make this film? What was the point? And one of the things I thought was maybe we were at some kind of height of 3D in film, and do you know, was Rise of an Empire 3D?
Yeah, it was.
It had to
I
have
think
been.
that's what it was. I think that must have been what it was, is that they were like, oh, okay, we need to make a new 3D film, and then they were like, well, 300 was a cool film, but it kind of came out just before the 3D renaissance, so what if we make another 300 film just so that we can make it 3D, because, you know what I mean? Like, someone was like, 300 would be so cool in 3D, and then that that's my theory anyway.
Absolutely.
And then someone saw Eva Green and they were like, should be good in 3D.
Yeah.
So I started to cough as I said that. It sounds like I'm bursting out into tears.
It sounded more like you were overcome with like carnal desire.
I definitely think you're right. There's scenes that are of like a lot of spears coming in front of the screen and the blood splatter. Did you notice that the blood splatter actually goes on the lens? Like things like that. I'm like, they must have just made it because 3D was a big thing.
Yeah, I hate blood splatter on the lens. Like it's such a annoying trope.
Well, again, I feel like you don't see it that much anymore.
Yeah, because it's stupid.
Yeah, but 300 Rise of an Empire is kind of like...
Stupid.
300 Rise of an Empire is very close to being Steve Buscemi's How Do You Do, Fellow Kids. Like, it's come in learning from what was cool nearly 10 years previous and come in and been like, look, we're still doing the same thing, and it's just like that... Like, this movie couldn't have had more of a timid reaction when it came out. Like, I don't know anyone who saw this movie, and the fact that people are surprised to learn it exists these days speaks to that as well, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm kind of done talking about them, so you guys want to move on?
Well, one thing, I did have a couple other things I wanted to talk about.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, is that all good?
Yeah,
is that okay,
fine.
guys?
I'd love to. I am nowhere near finished talking about these films.
If we're going to talk about them critically, we've sort of talked about why they're dumb, but one thing I thought was that by revealing a sympathetic side to Xerxes, you kind of ruin the character. Because maybe not a sympathetic side, but in the sequel they show how he came to be, and they show that, I don't know, to me I was like, well, kind of what was scary about Xerxes is that you didn't know what was going on. He was a mystery somewhat and believed himself to be king. And I also thought it was a bummer to see events happening after the events of 300, because in my head, I was like, yeah, it's cool that... So at the end of the first 300 movie, Leonidas, before he's killed, he throws a spear and it just grazes across Xerxes' cheek, which doesn't kill him, but proves that he can bleed. And to me, I was like, cool, so while he didn't kill him, he proved that a god can bleed, therefore he's not a god, therefore he will be less respected by those around him, and he'll eventually fall out of honor, right? Because he was proven that he's not a god. That was what I assumed the closure of the first film is. And then in the second film, he's still in command of his army, and he's still doing well, and he doesn't die at the end of the second film either. So I don't know. It was
maybe he's still around.
Yeah. But do you agree? Like, it kind of takes away the allure of him as a character from the first film.
Yeah, although I probably found Artismia and Xerxes more interesting than I found Leonidas.
Okay.
I just think the Spartans are dicks. I didn't really sympathize with them.
Right.
Like, oh, this guy's like, I'm a messenger, here's a message, and he's like, fuck you, I'm going to kick you into this pit. And then I was like, that's not very nice. Like, he's just a messenger. And he says, oh, surely you wouldn't kill a messenger. And he's like, this is Sparta. And
that's the same tone and accent he does it with as well.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is Sparta, man. You gotta...
Madness? No, this is Sparta. Yeah, so I didn't really sympathize with them at all. I was just like, you guys are kind of dicks.
Well, how much of a dick can you be if you're also trying to, free a nation from a dictator, man? Would you rather be the dick or the dictator? That's the question.
You've given me a lot to think about.
I'd rather be the dictator.
Yeah, obviously. Well, one thing that I want to know, and it's been bugging me since the start of the podcast. So, Nadezhda, how was your night last night? What were you drinking?
I had beer, Aperol spritz, shots of whiskey, vodka sodas. It's just like if it was behind the bar, I
My
had
goodness.
it. Yeah. That's why I'm a bit dead weight. Wow. More so than
Did you have a fun time?
I had a great night. If any of my friends listen to this, like, thanks, guys. Also, you guys should be listening to this. They better be listening to this.
I like how you're trying to convince them to listen to it as in them 40 minutes into the podcast already. Hey, Michael Fassbender's in the first one.
Michael
it's his first
Fassbender's
movie.
in the first one. I was shocked when I saw him. And he almost doesn't look like Michael Fassbender for a little bit. He looks like he could be like Michael Fassbender-esque. But no, that's legit Michael Fassbender.
I saw him. He screamed some form of like loyalty cry at Leonidas towards the beginning of the film, and in my head I was like, that looks like Michael Fassbender. And then it was, and I looked it up, and it was. And then in the second film, when Artismia is like getting real angry at one of the like prisoners they've caught and brung to, and she decapitates him. One of her like bodyguards in the background looks exactly like Oscar Isaac. And I was like, it's Oscar Isaac. And so I was like, I was going to do this big spiel about how Oscar Isaac is the Michael Fassbender of the 300 sequel. But it wasn't Oscar Isaac.
Yeah, but you messaged me and were like, dude, Oscar Isaac's in 300 Rise of an Empire, and he was in it for like 30 seconds, he didn't say anything, and he hasn't been back since.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe it's not Oscar Isaac, and you're like, no.
And I sent you screenshots.
Yeah.
And it looked like him. And it's not him. It looks like him out of Ex Machina.
Yeah, where he's got the shaved head and the beard.
Yeah, but it's not him.
His AJ look.
Yeah, that's how I look right now, for those that can't see me.
Which is everyone in the world except me and Nadezhda.
But that's just how I'd have it. That's just how I want it, you know?
Speaking
These are the only pairs of eyes you want on you.
Yeah.
Speaking of casting, so like I think it was late, and I'm not sure if this is just me, but in the second film, Themistocles has an Australian accent, right? Like the full way through the movie, he's got an Australian accent.
Well, because you wouldn't have them speaking ancient Greek, because like Gerard Butler has a Scottish accent.
So
well, a little bit, but so Sullivan Stapleton, who plays Themistocles, is Australian. Yeah. And Gerard Butler is obviously Scottish. But yeah, I think their accents do peek through a little bit.
Yeah, it's not a creative decision, Nadezhda, it's that they're not very good actors.
Right.
Yeah. Who even is that dude? What else is it? Because it's weird to cast him in like a big sequel when he's like, I didn't recognize him from anything else.
Yeah, and I don't think you're going to, mate. He was in Neighbours.
Ah, well, there you go. He's in Neighbours.
But yeah, Joel Edgerton apparently was looked at for the lead role, but another Australian actor there. But yeah, like even in the "This is Sparta," the Scottish accent does come through a little bit, because to do a Scottish accent, you have to be yelling.
Yeah. Speaking of "This is Sparta," do you guys remember a YouTube video called "This is Sparta, Another Techno Remix"?
You showed it to me earlier today, but no.
Nadezhda, do you know about this?
No.
So back in the day when I had an MP3 player instead of just not listening to music like I do now, This is Sparta, the techno remix, was on that MP3 player, and I listened to that all the time, and it's so funny. Like if you haven't seen it, it's basically it's the scene plays out. This is blasphemy, this is madness. But when he goes, "This is Sparta," he goes, "This is Sparta!" And it like bursts into this like techno jam that's like remixed the "This is Sparta" line. It's like, and it's just "This is Sparta" remixed at different tempos and speeds. And the music video for it was like a bunch of very 2006 famous GIFs at the time, with Leonidas's head superimposed over the characters in it, doing like dances and things like that. And that was probably the biggest lasting impact that 300 had on me, I think, at the time.
That was a real good story, dude.
Thanks, man.
So, do you guys want to move on to continue the franchise? Or do you want to know how to get the Spartan bod?
I'm going to let Nadezhda choose.
Yeah, I want to hear about how to get the Spartan bod.
Okay, so I wrote down the Spartan workout.
Is this sorry? Okay, so this isn't how to get a boyfriend who has got the Spartan bod. It's how to achieve it yourself. It's not how to get a Spartan bod to sleep next to you at night.
Yeah,
It's how to be the Spartan bod.
yeah. But I mean, maybe Nadezhda isn't, wanting just to know because she values her own worth by getting a man.
Yeah.
Maybe she wants to get this rippling abs for herself.
Yeah, Nadezhda, I'll take this one. Nadezhda's a strong female character, and she doesn't need a man to validate her nor speak for her, okay?
Okay. All right. So,
Well said.
Quiet, Nadezhda. I'm doing this, don't worry.
so the workout is pull-ups, 25 reps, a barbell deadlift with 135 pounds, 50 reps, push-ups, 50 reps, 24-inch box jumps, 50 reps, floor wipers, 50 reps, single arm clean and press with 36 pounds, kettlebell, 50 reps, and 25 reps of pull-ups. So you do that once and you get a Spartan bod.
Oh, well, it's a pity I don't understand what any of that means.
Yeah.
Presumably you've got to eat a lot of grapes and apples at the same time as well.
Yeah. So this brings us to a point we've reached many, many times on this podcast.
Oh my gosh.
Time to continue the franchise.
Here we go.
So Snyder told Collider that more sequels could go to other topics like ancient Greece, the American Revolutionary War, or a battle in China.
Yeah, those are. I was wondering about if like there's a opportunity for the 300 series to go to other vaguely mythical battles. Because the one thing I will say, despite the fact that they came out so far from each other, 300 with 302 being a thing that exists, it does feel like we're in the middle of a trilogy that doesn't need to be made, but I don't know. It feels like there's loose threads enough to warrant doing like a third perspective of the same battle, maybe.
Yeah.
But I think the next thing that happened in this battle is that, I mean, I could be, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's that the Greeks turned on themselves, and it was it was the Athenians versus the Spartans. And then the Persians kind of got a one-up. Yeah, they got like a one-up because they were everyone else was focused on fighting themselves. Which
Is that you'll continue the franchise? Nadezhda?
No, but it can be. But it wouldn't make for a very good movie, though, because you've built up Xerxes to be this, like, the evil guy, then you can't have them,
yeah, but, correct me if I'm wrong, but Persia fell eventually, right?
No, it's still around.
Persia's still around.
Yeah, the prince of it in the sands of time.
Yeah, but that's set in old days.
I'm bloody confused, mate.
No, I think Persia's the old Iraq. This is probably offensive to people.
Where did the cats come from?
That's a good point.
Where did the rugs come from?
Where do the cats come from, if not Persia?
Yeah, and the rugs. They're always having a sale.
I think that would be an interesting movie, just to watch Athens and Sparta go at each other. Who won that war? Do we know? This is horrible.
Rages on to this day.
I think eventually Athens and Persia actually teamed up. They kind of sided together.
Oh, why do they make movies about like doomed nations and treat it like they won in the end? like Braveheart, the final battle at the end of Braveheart, it ends with like it being like they fought like warrior poets. They fought like Scotsmen. And they died in that battle. The battle that Braveheart ends on. They got beaten.
Yeah, but they fought like Scotsmen.
What, badly?
Yeah.
They fought like warrior Spartans. Having like it's disappointing, I guess, to think that like the absurdity of only having 300 soldiers actually ended up being just as ill-advised. Like it was proven to be a bad idea. It kind of takes the mystique of like, because you hear that and you go, oh, that's amazing that 300 Spartans defeated like 10,000, but it's like, no, they didn't. Exactly what you thought would happen is what happened.
Yeah. All right, well, there is a couple of parody films as well. You've obviously got Meet the Spartans, which I saw in the cinema, and it's pretty bad. I do remember one joke that made me fucking crack up, though. At the start, when it's like the montage of them being trained, and so he has to like go into the, icy wasteland and survive, and he's there, he's shivering, and he's like, oh, I'm so hungry, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then he sees a Subway sub sitting on the ground, and he takes a bite out of it, and he goes, oh, no mayo, this is bullshit, and throws it away. And that was, oh my god, the funniest thing I'd ever seen.
I think Meet the Spartans was the movie that ended my love affair with spoof movies. I think that was the first one I saw where I was like, this is legitimately the worst movie I've ever seen. And I don't think I watched it. Like, up until then, I was watching, like, Epic Movie and Date Movie and Scary. I loved those movies when I was a burgeoning teen. And then I think Meet the Spartans was the first one where I was like, I'm out. This is pretty bad.
Right, yeah, I think because Meet the Spartans and Disaster Movie came out in the same year. And Disaster Movie, despite everything we've watched on this podcast, is probably the worst movie I've ever seen. And Meet the Spartans, by comparison, is a laugh film-filled romp.
Okay. Well, I never saw Disaster Movie.
It's actually horrendous.
I think the last one I watched was Date Movie. Did that have
That one's good.
It has what's that chick's name that was just the Bachelorette?
Alison Hannigan?
No, Sophie.
Sophie Monk.
Sophie Monk. It has her in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the last one I watched of those. I can't. No, I'm too old for that now. Those days are behind me.
Oh, she was from Bardo. That's right.
Yeah. Do you think if you watched a
Bardo.
scary movie like now that it would be good? Is this like the 300?
Yeah, it's so
question.
funny.
Nadezhda, we've actually covered Scary Movie on this podcast, the Scary Movie series.
Yeah, but also we covered Scream, and I watched Scream for the first time, and then I watched Scary Movie, and it's so funny. After it's a scene for scene remake of Scream, and it's so funny when you watch it, like being familiar with Scream, because I never was.
It actually holds up.
Well, I think the first one does. To answer, does the rest of the series hold up? The answer is kind of. I don't know if it's a full-on no. I still think I don't know. I want to say like they get bad after a certain point, but there's not really any. The fifth one.
The fifth one's
Scary Movie
fucking
5's
horrible.
real bad. But that's because it came out much like 300 Rise of an Empire and Cats and Dogs, The Revenge of Kitty Galore. It was like, why are you bringing this out now? You're not capitalizing on a success by bringing this out now.
And the film franchise that they chose to put all their eggs into the basket of was Mama.
Mm.
It's like a parody of Mama,
Yeah.
the Jessica Chastain film.
That movie was so unimpacting on society it actually doesn't exist anymore. It seeped through the cracks of reality.
Yeah, so there's also The Legend of Awesomest Maximus, or it's called National Lampoon's 301 in some regions, I think in New Zealand. And that came out in 2011.
Why? Why would you bring that out in 2011? To bridge the gap between the new one and the old one? Like, it's directly in the no man's zone. It's not like just before the new one, and it's not like just after the first one.
Yeah, well, it's closer to Rise of an Empire than it is to the original.
That's so stupid.
Yeah.
That makes me mad.
But so this little conversation we're having here isn't the first discussion about sequels for 300 Rise of an Empire, because in 2014, after a screening of the film, a group of people got into a discussion about the film's ending and whether or not a sequel would take place. The argument got pretty heated, and moments later, two of the guys ran over 23-year-old Michael Emerson with their truck and murdered him for disagreeing with them.
Michael Emerson from Lost.
Yeah. Same name, but different guy. But isn't that crazy? What a film to get murdered over.
Wait, and it was over a continue the franchise conversation.
Yes.
Specifically that.
Yep. About 300 Rise of an Empire.
That's peak nerddom, man. That's peak angry nerd argument too.
Yeah, but it's also, you look at the people that did it, and it's peak trashy Texans arguing about their fucking Zack Snyder franchise.
Wow.
So this one's for you, Michael.
Yeah, devoted to Michael Emerson, not the one from Lost.
Yeah. So, who wants to go first for Continue the Franchise?
Well,
I'll go first. All right. So, my one's real quick. So, I didn't really care that much, but I was like, wouldn't this be fun to keep that distinct visual style of the first film, and maybe take a page out of Pup Star's book and retell the first film with dogs. And so it's essentially the same film, but with dogs. And instead of Spartans, you have Dalmatians, and it's called 301 Dalmatians.
Very good.
Because also, one thing that's kind of not clear, is it Leonidas and 300 Spartans, or is it Leonidas and 299 other Spartans for a total of 300?
Yeah, I don't know. You'd think it'd be the latter because that is the title of the film.
But they keep saying Leonidas and his 300 Spartans.
Yeah, maybe they're including his person in that.
Maybe it's just a rough estimate. Leonidas and about 300 Spartans. And the film's just called roughly 300.
That's the historical inaccuracy, is that it might have been 300. They couldn't. The counting was different.
Yeah, it was actually 3,000.
It was 30,000. They still lost. It's actually a tale of like immense failure.
All right, who wants to go next?
Mine's a bit lame.
That's okay.
If it, well, it kind of makes sense if you go back to when the first film came out, that they would have followed it up with maybe like the Battle of Troy. That seems like a logical, not involved in this particular war, but just in terms of Greek mythology and
like
potentially historically accurate.
A Zack Snyder Greek mythology universe. Because if there's one thing Zack Snyder's good at, it's setting up cinematic universes.
Martha, Sparta.
This is Martha.
Yeah, so because I mean, there is merit to the idea of like just doing a bunch of films in the same style of different wars, like how Zack Snyder said, you could do ancient Greece, American Revolutionary War, or a battle in China.
Yeah, and I do get that, but at the same time, I think the
gives
allure of 300 was more that it was based on a graphic novel. And I think Zack Snyder went down that pathway instead for a while. So, and still to this day, basically, is that instead of doing the Greek mythology or the historical battles, he just went into more graphic novels.
Each more graphic than the last.
Well, okay. There is a Troy movie, right? It's got Brad Pitt in it.
Yeah.
Did Zack Snyder direct that?
It says Jared Leto on it.
Ugh. I don't know. When did that come out? Troy.
I think it was like, I want to say like 2004.
Oh,
Troy,
so before
2004.
Yeah. It was written by David
Benioff. Wow.
And it was directed by Wolfgang Peterson.
The best. He's the Zack Snyder of his day.
Yeah. Oh, no, wait. Jared Leto isn't in Troy. He's in the other one with Colin Farrell.
What's
that one?
Alexandra?
Alexander,
no,
yeah.
Alexander. Me. And you see his balls. It's the one thing I remember about that movie. Yeah. It's like
Which also came out in 2004, hence my confusion.
Well, they're also about very similar things, so
yeah,
there's that too. All right, so in a film franchise Fortnights second, for the second time ever, I've actually already created a continue the franchise
Here
for
we
300.
fucking go.
This is the second time. This happened with the Final Destination episode. This is the second time in a row that we've had a film or a series that I've already continued the franchise for. And so when I was in high school, after just seeing 300, I was so enamored with it that I made a little cartoon about it. And basically, the idea was it was 300, but instead of battles, it was with tennis. Like everyone was playing tennis. And that was about it.
What was it called?
It was called 300 Days of Summer, and it was the main character's town went to battle in the tennis championships with their neighboring town, and the one thing I remember from it off the top of my head now is the main character standing with his Spartans and saying, "We have 300 Spartans," and then this tennis ball flies over and knocks one of them in the head, and he goes, 299 Spartans, and then another one flies over and hits. He's like 298, because the reason I remember doing this cartoon is when watching 300 this time, I created the same joke accidentally in my head whenever Spartans would get killed off. I was like, now there's only 290. They need like a counter on the screen, and then I was like, wait, I already made that joke. Like I already did that before. So I don't know. You can go watch that on YouTube if you want. Don't do it. And along with Final Destination from last week about four or five boys who narrowly miss getting hit in the nuts, and are then chased by a force trying to hit them in the nuts until they are each picked off. So I thought 300. You know, where can we continue the franchise with now? How about 3000, and it's essentially the same movie. Not much has changed, but now they live underwater, and and it's 300 underwater, and it's called 3000, and it's done with fishmen, I guess.
Who does the score?
Busted. No, the Jonas Brothers.
Oh, fuck you.
Could you have an Aquaman crossover? It's Zack Snyder,
No.
isn't it?
No, I won't hear of it. Yeah, I've basically just pitched Aquaman, haven't I? Like the Zack Snyder tangentially related film about warriors underwater. So yeah, that's my...
Man.
Yeah, that's it. I did originally think in space, but then I was like, nah, it's funnier if it's underwater, because then 3000 doesn't even have a namesake. Just makes no sense. What? Like if it's 3000 in space, it's like, right, because it's futuristic, but no, it's underwater. It's not even set in the future. Set in the past. Set before 300. It's set back in the human evolutionary chain when we still lived in the ocean. We're fish people.
Right, nice.
Yeah.
The primordial ooze.
And it's called 3000 because it's 3000
leagues under the sea.
I was going to say BC, but even that wouldn't be early enough. Right, it's called 30 million, and it's set 30 million years ago. There we go. And everyone has New Zealand accents. That's what they just sounded like.
Just so you guys know, while you were talking, AJ, I found 300 Days of Summer and Final Destination.
Okay, good.
So, I don't know if Final Destination opens up saying this episode may not be suitable for younger family members. It contains adult themes that may offend people.
I wonder... Oh, right, because it's about...
Getting hit in the nuts.
Getting hit in the nuts, and that was the height of edginess back in the day. Or if you play them, I'm cutting it out of the episode. I'm not even kidding. So don't bother. People can go find it themselves. I'm not even kidding. If you play it, I'm cutting it out. It's going to be followed by a loud bleep here.
So if you're looking for Final Destination, it's TESTINATION, one word.
Yeah.
So Final
Thanks.
Destination. Just destination with a T. I should have said that. Because
I should also
I
point
searched
out-
like Testy Nation.
Right. I should also point out that one of the main characters in my cartoon was a very kind of like racist portrayal of an Asian person. However, I did get my Asian friend to voice him, and therefore I am better than The Simpsons because I get my ethnicities to be played by their ethnicities.
So the Chronicles of Life and Death by Grim
That's what it's
Sky
called.
Production.
Oh,
is
stop
better
this
than The
madness,
Simpsons.
please. That's it. Yeah,
Do you say stop this madness?
I didn't. No.
This isn't madness, AJ.
What is it? Tell me.
This is Patrick.
I'm pretty sure that was another remix back in the day. It was just, this is Patrick!
Well, as this episode draws to its climax, much like AJ will in 12 days,
Don't laugh, Nadezhda. You don't know. You don't know
you
the
don't know what
struggle.
it's like.
Yeah.
Yeah, we may as well just end it there. So we normally would get the lovely Nadezhda to give us a random number, but last time she gave us Earbud, which ended up,
Condemned us.
yeah. So since then we've started a Patreon, and we've got a list of wonderful patrons, which Nadezhda is conspicuously absent from.
Yeah, give us money, Nadezhda.
I'm fun employed, you guys.
Oh,
That's true.
the finance.
But we throw it out to our $1 patrons. Every second episode, you guys get to suggest a film franchise that we could cover, and the one with the most votes ends up being chosen. And this week,
Wait. Don't say it yet, because
Why?
people are going to be hanging on to finding out what it is, and that's why now we let Nadezhda tell us where we can find her, so that people are forced to hear our plugs before they listen to what the next episode is. So Nadezhda,
Where can you find me?
Yeah,
South
You
America.
Yeah, Argentina, look me up. You can find me at Pop Culture Vulture on YouTube and pop.culture.vulture on Instagram. And yeah, hopefully I can keep up the videos overseas from hostels. Just mix
Do
it
it.
up a bit. Yeah.
get the random people you meet to review the movies with you.
Yeah. Pop Culture Pigeon. Is that what we decided on?
Yeah, or just flying south for the winter. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's
Yeah,
your
like
thing.
a series.
Yeah. Abroad. Migration. Pop Culture Vulture migration. There you go.
Great
I
migration.
don't know. Yeah. Cool. And you can find us at Cult Popture on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram and SoundCloud and iTunes and cultpopture.com and cultpopturemedia@gmail.com. Did I say YouTube? I can't
Yeah.
remember. Okay, there you go. Sweet. So what is our next franchise? Richie Roo? Richie Baby?
It is a trilogy of 3 films which all star Mike Myers as the titular Austin Powers. Yeah, baby.
Hell yeah. Nadezhda's raising the roof. You got to
Yeah.
do the vocal equivalent of raising the roof because it's a podcast, so we can't see it. So you just got to go.
Unts,
Whoop,
unts,
whoop.
unts, unts,
Yeah,
unts,
unts. I
Caw-caw.
like that. Awesome. Um, good stuff. All right.
Hey, good stuff, gang.
Hey. Good job.
Hey, good luck in South America, Nadezhda.
Mm.
And
you.
all the best for London and the rest of your adventures.
Yeah. And if you can just spread the good word of Cult Popture
Abroad.
everywhere that you go, yeah, that'd be good. And your own stuff, I guess, if that's important.
Yeah, no, we're keeping an eye out for each other.
Yeah,
Here at,
when you come to New Zealand at the end of
Yeah,
London.
for sure.
At the end of London.
She said yes.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Thanks. That's it.
That's it. Goodbye, everybody. I'll play This Is Sparta to
Yeah, play your
us out.
shitty techno remix you like.
I will. All right, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
This is madness. Madness. This is